Hola, ¿qué tal? Bienvenidos todos a este nuevo episodio. Hoy estamos muy contentos, tenemos un gran invitado que está conectado desde Los Ángeles, es un productor increíble, ingeniero, ha trabajado con muchas bandas, entonces les va a gustar mucho. Recuerden que este live va a estar 100% en inglés, así que aquí vamos. Hi Adam, how are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. How are you?
Great, great. Thank you for be here with us. It's an honor.
Oh, it's a pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you. And we are with David Sickart in the controls. Hi, Sick. How are you?
Hi everyone, how are you? Welcome to this new episode of Producing with Julio Monroy. Adam, it's a huge honor to have you here. Yeah, really looking forward to the conversation. For the people watching, remember that you can actually send your questions through the comment section on the platform on which you are watching, and I will communicate the questions to both Adam and Julio. So I leave you with the conversation.
Thank you, David. Well, Adam, I have a first question for you. And can you tell us how did you become an audio engineer and producer, music producer? Your beginnings, your history.
Um, yeah, it was a very glorious beginning. um, like I came from a musical family. My father is a musician. I grew up with music all day, every day, just hearing music. And my father had wired stereo speakers all over the house in different rooms. So even if we were in the kitchen and I would do my homework at the kitchen table, we would be hearing music in stereo. And I think it
Wow.
was, and, uh, as a kid growing up listening to vinyl, my father had a reel to reel machine, 4 track. And some of my fondest memories were like lying on the carpet between the speakers, just listening to records and just absorbing the sound. And I didn't realize I was becoming aware of mixing or how sound can make you feel. I wasn't becoming aware of spatials within the picture, within the arrangement, but I was just absorbing stuff. Didn't really show an interest to make music until I was about 13. And then there's, apart from my father, who was a bass player, he had upright bass and electric bass. Suddenly, I heard there were two musicians. One was Michael Brecker, the saxophone player, and
Uh-huh.
poof, suddenly I wanted to play saxophone. I had a
Wow.
Saturday job. Uh, I bought a saxophone, and the other musician, the third one, was Terry Kath, the guitarist in Chicago, who was a real rock bluesy guitarist, incredible singer, incredible vibe. And he made me want to be a rock star. So I thought, well, that's it. Between my upbringing from my dad and my education and just listening to music, so various things. I wanted to study music, but I was banned from learning music from my school teacher. So I learned on my own. Had some music lessons, but generally, like at weekends, I would just play records. And first of all, I would like play saxophone and just jam with the records until my teeth were through my lip, and then I couldn't play anymore. So I'd get my dad's electric bass and I'd play bass to all the songs, fumble around until my fingers had blisters on them. And then when I couldn't play sax or sing or bass, then I would sing to the records and learn all the different parts. So that very much became my part of my main education, I would say, in learning music. Put a band together when I was at school about 15. We were terrible. Um, I realized that I have to move to London. I was born in a town called Brighton. I realized I have to move to London if I want to become a rock star, um, because there would be more musicians to find. My journey to that, I took a year off after school, before college, before university, and I worked on construction sites in my hometown, Brighton. And then I went back to Sweden. I'd worked in Sweden before when I was like 16, 17. So when I was 18, I went back to Sweden for the best part of a year, and worked in restaurants, and learnt to cook. Came back to England, started at university in London at law school, um, and really didn't like it. Quit law school, decided, I put a band together at law school because I'd moved to London, put a new band together. We were still terrible. And I thought, okay, this has been a very long journey to find out I haven't got a clue how to make music. So I thought I need to get into a studio, and that's how I can find out. So I quit law school. I wrote to 100 different studios, and I got one interview. And I went for the interview, and the manager said, why are you here? I said, I'd like to become a record producer. And he laughed. And he said, well, I said, do you have any jobs as a record producer? And he said, well, from your letter that you sent me, I see that you've done construction and that you can cook. I said, yeah. As I said, it was very glorious beginning. So I said, yeah, I've done construction and I can cook. He said, great. We're enlarging the studio. The console is too big for the control room. We need a bigger window. So I need you to do all the crap construction jobs that the other guys don't want to do. And
Yeah.
then in the afternoon, come to me, tell me how much money you need to go to buy food and cook for 15 people, 15 people every night, 3-course meals. He said on the top floor of the studio, there's an electric stove with 4 rings and an oven. I want you to do 3-course meals. When you're done cooking, you can serve the food. When you've done serving, you can clean up the kitchen. When you've done cleaning up the kitchen, you can go back to construction. 9 a.m. to 3 a.m., 6 days a week.
Wow.
And he said, and I'll pay you £20 a week, which was about $25, $30 back then. And I thought, wow, I'm in. And I get paid. So it was very glorious. I didn't know anything about the history of the studio. It was the only studio that gave me an interview from 100 letters. I knew nothing about the studio. Soon I discovered, I knew obviously I was at Trident Studios, and pretty soon I discovered the history of the studio. One day I sat at the piano, the famous Trident
Yeah.
piano. I,
Yeah.
I thought there was no one in the building. I sat at the Trident piano. I had someone run down the stairs into the room screaming at me. What the F do you think you're doing touching that piano? And my voice was like, I don't know. What gives you the right to touch that piano? Like, I don't know. And my voice going higher and higher. And then have you any idea what records have been made on that piano? And I was like, I don't know. Only dogs could hear me by the time my voice had gone so high. I was so scared. And he said, the Beatles, Hey Jude, and the White Album.
Wow.
Elton John, Your Song, the first 3 albums. David Bowie, Life on Mars, Ziggy Stardust, Hunky Dory. Lou Reed, Transformer, Mott the Hoople, T-Rex, Carly Simon, You're So Vain, on and on. And there was a band who was signed to Queen for the first 5 albums because they did a demo deal, signed
Wow.
to Trident, and that was Queen for the first 5 albums. So a lot of the Queen stuff was also done on that piano. So I was
My friend,
completely
that's
freaked. Yeah, I was completely
amazing.
freaked out. Yeah, and that was the studio that I arrived in as a chef and construction worker, and then worked my way up. I became what's called a T-boy, which is when you're basically a runner.
Yeah.
Normally T-boy is the lowest level that you can find, but I found a level below T-boy, and I had to get promotion up to
Yeah, of
T-boy.
course.
But then I became like a tape operator, then a
Hmm.
senior tape op, assistant engineer. I became an engineer, and then from engineering becoming co-producer and then producing. So it was a very old school organic way to learn, but I learned from some of the most incredible, best people in the world.
Well, my friend, that's an incredible story.
Mm.
Um, I guess it's like going to that studio is like a dream. Trident Studios, right?
Hmm.
In London.
Yeah, in London, in Soho. There we are. The picture on the top left is the mix room. The picture in the middle, on the top in the center, that's the control room. That's the window that I was hired to help make a bigger window. And so
That's good.
that piece of glass, I owe my career to that piece of glass.
Yeah.
Um, and the console that is there, this picture is 1978 when I started. January 12, I started, 1978. This picture was after the reconstruction was done, and that's the Trident A range console in the top center picture in the control room, which was the tracking room. The window looked down, and the recording area was below. And then the picture top left is the mix room, and that was a Trident B range. Basically, it's the same as an A range, except it was configured differently, more for mixing. Um, and that's where I I learned to mix. If you look at the left hand side of the room, you can I think you can see maybe two track machines. We actually had
Yeah.
about
Yeah,
four.
I do.
We had four two-track machines, which we used for tape delays. One was used to do the mix on, the master mix down to two-track from the console. In the further back corner to the left was the 24-track. And when Trident went 48-track, then the second machine was just outside the control room. We had a machine room outside, but the main machine was in the 24-track in the back left corner. Then the two-track for your mixes to go to, half-inch two-track, and then four quarter-inch machines to do tape delays. And the tape delays, we didn't have digital delays, so you would take send a signal from the console to machine 1, 2, 3, or 4. It would be recorded on the record head, and before it hit the playback head, you'd pull the tape away, put it around a mic stand, and let it go back to the playback. And however far you pulled the mic stand out was how long the delay would take when the sound was recorded to how long it would come back and hit the playback head. So everything was manual. In a big mix, we would have four different mic stands, four different tape machines, all at different speeds or different lengths of tape. It was like spinning plates on a pole, keeping all the machines going. Sometimes you were running six different machines.
And Adam, for example, I see that you learned in a beautiful place with, I guess, a lot of artists. But how do you balance the use of traditional recording techniques with modern digital tools like Pro Tools and
Oh, absolutely. I started on Pro Tools 21 years ago, I think, 21,
Mhm.
22 years ago. Um, but in 1988, I had a studio in my house while I still lived in England. I've lived in LA for 30 years. Um, but in 1988, I had a studio in my house in London, and I was running Cubase on a Atari 1040 ST computer. And um, the first Roxette album, Look Sharp, it sold, I think, 20 million albums. I did the songs that I did on that album, I did on the Atari 1040 ST machine. I've always, excuse me, we still have some effects from the smoke from the
Don't,
fires.
don't wo- yeah, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Um, but Trident, obviously, 1978, everything was analog. In 1983, when SSL consoles started to become, more more in studios, I became one of the first SSL engineers. And I even made suggestions for the computer software, which is still in the software. So I've always been involved with technology um, as it moves forward. Back in the 70s, we didn't even have code where we could synchronize a drum machine and an arpeggiator together. We used to have to use kind of what's called jam sync to try and force them to follow each other, and they would follow each other for about 30 seconds. So I've always been involved with how do you make something happen different, and how to implement technology. And going through the times, then I was involved. I had a MIDI studio at home. I had samplers, all of that stuff. Um, so I've always been involved with that. From about 10 years ago, I got involved with Plugin Alliance and um, would give feedback on some of their plugins or some suggestions of extra buttons to put on a certain plugin. Or they would just ask me to listen to the SSL channel and see if I felt not just that the EQ is accurate, but if it has the sonic kind of like harmonic that the real console has. So I've always been involved with technology, and all that matters when you're making music is how do I achieve the sound of what I'm feeling? That's what it's all about. That's all that matters. So to me, it doesn't matter if I'm using one of the oldest techniques or one of the newest techniques. All that matters is achieving the sound that I'm going for.
The feeling,
Okay,
right?
Yeah.
that's actually amazing. I do have a question about that, and it's how do you think it's the relationship then between the creative aspect with the technical aspect? And for example, if a songwriter brings you this piece, do you think it makes sense, for example, to make a recording analog in the digital era just because it might make the soul of the song come out better?
Absolutely. In all of the techniques and all of the tools that we have, and this is what I really work on sharing, with my students at UCLA, Herb Halpert, and in my master class at Berkeley in Valencia, in Spain. All that matters is achieving the sound of the emotion, whether that's aggression or whether it's sadness or melancholy or just being happy and want to have fun. Um, we have all of these tools, we have all of these colors. The more I always liken or compare making music to my early beginning of being a chef in a restaurant, cooking a meal, or doing a painting. Whether you have lots of colors, lots of different shades. For example, for me cooking, I have 30 spices in my cabinet. If I want to make a meal, I could think, wow, if I put an equal amount of all 30 spices in my meal, I like all of them. So surely if I put 30, an equal amount of each spice in my meal, it would be the most incredible thing ever. Um, Probably not. I would probably spit it out. So
Yeah.
the thing is when you're making a meal, it's about choosing what are the ingredients, what will achieve my concept of what this meal is, and you might choose 5 ingredients or 6 ingredients. When I'm going to make a song, I sit down and I think, what is the purpose of the song? What is the emotional purpose? What is the artist trying to achieve? What emotion do they want to share? And then I'll think, okay, so what are the instruments that would bring that? What are the musical parts that each instrument will play in connection with each other, but also independently? And then how do I arrange those musical parts for the sound, for the frequency picture from the bottom to the top? How do I arrange things in their positions from being in the middle, or maybe low in the middle, or higher in the middle? Or do I want things to be high and to the sides here, but the bass to be mono and the drums to be mono? So when I first hear a song, in my mind, I actually do a drawing. I get a very clear image of the different musical parts that I'm going to bring to it with the artist, the sound of those parts, how they connect, but also how I'm going to arrange those sounds in my picture, in their position, up there or in the middle or down here. Maybe it's a very round kick drum, or it's more in the middle, more pointed kick drum. And if the kick drum's going there, and I do a little shape for the kick drum in my mind, then maybe the bass is going to be wider underneath. And then how else am I going to decorate this picture in the different areas? So to me, it doesn't matter whether I use something really old or something new or combine. All that matters is I've got all of these different colors, I have all of these different spices. Which is the right one now for what I'm trying to achieve? I'm one of the albums I'm on at the moment. I'm on 4 different albums. Um, it's a jazz album. We recorded the album in one day. We did all the backing tracks just before Christmas. And last night I had 6 of the band here till 2:30 in the morning. We were doing additional saxophone, additional keyboards, additional production, additional vocals, redoing a bass on a track. Um, in a home DIY studio after we tracked the whole record with 7 musicians in a studio,
Uh-huh.
just over 2 weeks ago. Um, so it doesn't matter to me um, whether it's old or new that I'm using. You know, I I've had the experience of nearly 5 decades now to
Yeah. Wow.
to discover all these different techniques and colors. All that matters is getting the result. And yesterday I was doing something. Um, the
Yeah, you sent me a
performance,
photo.
yeah,
That-
the
Yeah.
performance was the performance was fantastic, but the tuning was a little bit iffy. So I quickly put up Melodyne, you know,
Hmm.
and I didn't do 100% correction. I left it a little bit human, but did enough percentage to just bring it in a little bit. So I'm doing an album, a jazz album, recorded in the most traditional way, 7 musicians at one time, live in a studio, and now I'll use Melodyne, to fix certain things. So it's a
And,
beautiful it's a beautiful combination.
and for example, when you were in your beginnings, there wasn't Melodyne and Pro Tools, nothing of that. But what do you think about these tools? Do you think that, um, for example, Melodyne, I don't know, Elastic Audio or Beat Detective makes the musicians a little lazy, or what do you think?
It depends how you use it.
Uh-huh.
Um, Again, on this record, um, we did a lot of pre-production, but still, when we went to the studio and in pre-production, I set the tempo for every song, and I'll do it over like 10 different times of the song, and we agree where the tempo is because normally people speed up when they go to the studio.
Hmm.
People are excited. There's more adrenaline. They want to play
Yeah.
faster. So it's like no. In rehearsal, we tried this 10 times. This was always the BPM. When we got to the studio, we were working really late. The guys got a little bit tired, and some of the more mellow tunes were very, very slow. So afterwards, I had to use Elastic Audio to
Hmm.
change the BPM, you know, to make it a bit
Yeah.
faster. It was perfect. So all of it, um, you know, I can't stand it when people say, "Oh, with auto tune, you don't have to be able to sing anymore." With Melodyne, you don't have to be able to play in tune. You know, first of all, you have to be able to write a good song. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Very important.
and and that's the bottom line. I've worked with some artists where they weren't having ideas, or they weren't happy about their music, and every day they thought they need to buy a different guitar or buy a different synth. You know,
Hmm.
Keith Richards had a broken guitar with 5 strings. Kurt Cobain's guitar, you couldn't tune it. Butch Vig says the guitar was out of tune. He used to have to try and sample it and fix it. Um, he still wrote good songs, even with a
Yeah,
with a busted out of tune guitar. So the fundamental always is write a good song. I then don't care. Back in the day, we didn't have tuning things, but sometimes we would have to punch in and out for a word or for a syllable, or if someone didn't pronounce
uh-huh.
the S or the T at the end of the word, we'd have to be in and out on tape, you know, and fix it. So we still had technology. You could punch in, you know, the technology got more advanced, but
Yeah,
the bottom line is always write a good song, you know. And there is so much good music out now. When people say, oh, there's no good music anymore, it's like, have you listened? Have you tried to search? You know, there's always amazing music. There's always people coming through who have such a beautiful heart and spirit and want to share that through music. And music should change. It should develop. You
yeah,
know, um, from classical composers through to you know big band jazz and Gershwin, through to Sinatra and Bing Crosby, through to Elvis Presley and the Beatles and Motown and all of it. Music should develop and change. There were always restrictions. The Beatles were recording on 3 track, 4 track.
yeah.
You know,
Very difficult. I can't
yeah,
imagine how to do that.
I I cannot imagine. I did a panel one time with Jeff Emerick, who, was the Beatles engineer. I can't imagine how he did what he did. You know,
Yeah,
just one of he is one of the most important people um, in what we do in making music. Um, just how he had the imagination to try and achieve what he did. Phenomenal. So yeah, the technology is always there. There'll always be more technology. You know, stuff that we do now, in 5 years, people go, oh, I can't believe you used to have to do that, 5 years ago. Now it's so much easier. You know, the only thing you can't replace, and I believe you can't replace it, is a good song and an artist that people want to connect with. People don't want to connect with a hologram. It's a good gimmick, but they don't want to go and see a show of a hologram. They want to see a show of an artist that they love. They
yeah,
love the lyrics. They follow the person's life. They feel this connect. When the artist writes lyrics, they feel that the lyrics are for them, or they understand that it. Music always will be about a connection. You know.
and talking about holograms, I saw that there's a show in Las Vegas in the
Yeah.
sphere of U2,
Yeah.
and they are not there. It's
No.
I was like, have
I
you been there?
no. I haven't. I haven't been to see it. I'm sure it's interesting.
Hmm.
Um, it I'd kind of be interested to see it, but after Tupac, after they did the hologram of Tupac at Coachella, my son was there the first weekend. No one had ever seen anything like that, and suddenly Tupac came out on stage. Everyone was crazy about it. A few weeks later, I was invited to a theater here in Hollywood, um, and I sat in a theater with like 6 other people, and Frank Sinatra walked out on the stage, and then Elvis walked out on the stage, and they sang different songs, and I can't remember the others because I was bored. You know, after a while, it's a good gimmick, and it's my opinion. We all have opinions. Everybody has an opinion. Um, I prefer to see an artist and connect with the artist.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Me too. Adam, and talking about artists, you have worked with a lot of artists, um, Lenny Kravitz,
Mm.
The Cure. Wow, can you tell us more about that experience? Because well, Lucy Bell, Rush,
Yeah.
Love Monkeys, it's amazing.
Um, Kiss. I was an assistant um, and working on the mix. Uh, Mike Stone, who was a Trident, got into Trident as a T-boy, worked his way up, became an engineer producer, worked on the first five Queen albums. I assisted Mike on and off for about 2 years. Probably worked on 12 albums with him. Um, the first record. That's my husky. Give me
Your
one
dog.
second. Yeah, I got two huskies.
Can we see? Can we see your
Yeah,
dog? Amazing. I
yeah,
love dogs.
yeah. Kara, come here. Give me 1 second. Hang on. I've
I
got
have
two
my
huskies. Come.
my dog is right next to me too.
Oh, she's gone now. I'll send you some
Oh,
pictures. No, um, she's gone.
yeah.
They're
My
both
dog is
rescue
right
huskies.
here, right here,
Oh, great.
here. In
She,
the, yeah, she's
okay,
sleeping right now.
no, no, normally our female husky, um, they're both rescues. She's normally on the sofa in my room at the back. She thinks she's Rick Rubin. She comes in and she sits on the sofa, um, and and or she lies down on the sofa. But it's good to have a dog in the studio because if you turn up too much high frequency, the dog will start to make a noise, and then you have to reduce it. So
The dog
it's
is going
very
like, wait,
useful.
wait, what happened?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I got a boy husky who's a Alaskan husky, and she's a Siberian. But yeah. So one of my first experiences of like hands-on being involved, from being the tape op, and then with Mike Stone becoming his assistant engineer, then engineering with him, and I used to do backing vocals for him as well. Sometimes we'd be on a record, and he decided it
Wow.
needs more backing vocals, so he knew I could sing, and I used to do sessions, so I would do that. But
Do
my
you sing? Do you sing
yeah,
too?
yeah.
Wow.
But my I'm not going to sing now. But
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 you
my
have a lot of you're not
that
surprised. You sing, you cook, you mix, you
yeah,
produce. Wow, man, it's amazing.
yeah, keep busy. Um, and, and I deliver newspapers in the morning to houses. I throw them. um,
Oh well.
but yes, my first experiences recording were when Kiss did the four solo albums. Each one of them had their picture on the album, and I worked on all four, but especially worked for about 3 months on Paul Stanley's album and Gene Simmons's solo albums, um, which were my first experiences basically of being involved in records. So there's nothing like starting with a little bit of pressure. You know, this was in like 1979, 80 when they were really at the top. You know, I was
Yeah.
20 in 1978. They were maybe 26. One of the most successful bands at that time in the world. Um,
Did you ever imagine when you were in Trident Studios that you were going to work like with bands like Kiss?
No, no, it was just, but once I got into Trident and I realized the heritage of the place, you know, and then without being funny, it was just the normal situation. Every day you were working with famous people and big stars, whether it was Kiss or Tina Turner or Rod Stewart or Phil Collins or Vangelis. Um, every day. And then actually working with my hero, Michael Brecker, the sax player, I ended up working with him 4 times. The first time I couldn't even look at him because I was crying. I couldn't see for 2 days. I couldn't see. It was too much for me. And then later, over the period of years, we got to know each other, which was really nice. But I never imagined that. My thought was I'll get into a studio, I'll learn how to make music, and then I'll leave and I'll become a rock star. Um, but when I got into studios and started to find my way, after the construction, when they put the console in the room and they started putting all the equipment and putting the modules, the channels in the console, I thought, oh my God, what have I done? I thought, I'll never understand any of this. I've made a terrible mistake. It's only been a few months. Maybe I can go back to law school and get a real job. Um, but as it went on, I got over my fear. Um, and even now, I'm not a technical person, although I understand pretty much all technology and obviously I'm involved in the development of some of it. I'm not a technical person. Um, all of the equipment, all of the buttons, all of the knobs, I just see of how do I create the particular sound that is going to feel the way I want it to. So I come from a very kind of more emotional, artistic approach to engineering rather than a technical one. I understand some of the techniques involved in the gear, but I don't understand how the gear is designed. It doesn't matter. But if you blindfold me, I can listen to 12 microphones and tell you which one we're listening to, you know, or I can listen to 6 different compressors and tell you which one we're listening to. So it's all by ear and how the physical and emotional responses. But you were asking me about some of those early bands. Kiss, the 4 Kiss albums were the first ones where I was actually involved in the process. The first record I saw being recorded at Trident was Peter Gabriel's second album with Tony Levin on bass, Joey Mawado on drums, David Rhodes on guitar, just phenomenal. So it kind of set the level of, okay, I guess this is the kind of artist that's coming in. But the first record that I was involved on the mix after several weeks of recording was a Rush. I was like an assistant on Hemispheres. Maybe I was still a T-boy then. But then on Permanent Waves, I was involved very much in the recording process as an assistant engineer, second engineer, and then I was involved in the mix. And that was one of the biggest learning experiences I ever had. Because we were recording for weeks. And obviously, after the drums were done, which generally they would do the drums in Canada and then they'd come and do everything at Trident. Neil Peart would seclude himself. He didn't come to the studio. He'd be away writing the lyrics and send them by mail, send them to the band. While the band were, Geddy and Alex were putting down all the musical parts, and every part was so intricate. Every musical part was so well worked out. The sounds by Terry Brown, producer engineer, was so crafted. Everything sounded amazing. We spent weeks on this, and then it came to the mix stage. And I thought, well, what is there to mix? They've done everything. All the parts are great. The sounds are great. I presume you put the faders up and run it onto the 2-track. In those days, obviously no automation. So there were 4 of us at the console. Hands on the console in that mix room picture, 10 faders each. I was sitting on the end. Excuse me. I was sitting on the end, 10 faders, absolutely terrified. Terry Brown was next. Then Geddy had 10 faders and Alex had 10 faders. And we would perform the songs. And I realized, excuse me, I realized that mixing is the next step, the next level of performance. Performing what's already been played and now taking it to the next level, which is playing with volume, playing with effects, moving the perspective of an instrument, maybe adding reverb and putting it further away, and then take the reverb off and bring it forward, or pan instruments slightly to the sides to make room for another instrument to come through the middle, and just the arrangement and understanding your sonic space. And even then I didn't quite understand, especially in that thing. I was too worried about making a mistake on the faders. But later, it was around 1984, 85, that I really understood the spatials in mixing. And I always talk about, for me, it was like in the story Alice in Wonderland, when she, goes through the mirror into an alternative reality. For me, um, I kind of went through the mix and stood in the mix and started to understand that all of the space can be in front, it can be behind, it can be up here, it can be down there, or it can be at the sides or in mono. And once you understand like the depth and how to create that and put something in the background, but maybe bring it forward as you send something else back, once I understood that you can really create 3D sound, immersive sound in stereo. And
Uh-huh.
this was in 1984, and for me that was my epiphany. I was struggling so much with mixing. I'd been struggling with mixing for about 4 or 5 years. I hated mixing. It was a miserable experience. I was having hits, but still
Yeah.
mixing was overwhelming to me. Um, and suddenly, when I had that kind of epiphany of like walking between the speakers and walking into the mix and realizing that there's all this dimension, suddenly mixing became enjoyable, and it became something that I look forward to. But even so, even when I hear a song the first time, if someone sits down and plays an idea of a song on an acoustic guitar or piano, and they just sing it to me, and they want production, from that moment, I hear the drum part and I hear the sounds of the drums. I hear where the other instruments will go. I can do the drawing of the song, where instruments will be, what shape they'll take, what position they'll be, behind or forward. Um, I get all of that in my head, often on the first listen, and then I have my plan, then I have my concept. So now it's about, okay, now let's make the choices in the musical parts and the sounds of those parts and their position. Let's follow that plan and make those choices and create the picture that that represents that initial feeling that the artist had when that idea first came to them, or that feeling first came to them.
Um, 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 and do you know now the new technology? Well, not new, but Dolby Atmos. What do you think? Because
Yeah,
we were talking about the stereo, and now you have 12 speakers to play instruments. What do you think?
I think um, I think it's amazing. I've heard some incredible, beautiful stuff on Dolby Atmos,
Hmm.
which is, I heard some Joni Mitchell stuff lately. She's one of my biggest heroines. Um, it was overwhelming. I was nearly in tears. It was just absolutely so beautiful. But and I've heard other Dolby Atmos stuff, which was like, yeah, you know, it's around me, but
Yeah.
I don't feel that you've understood the original intention and expanded it. You know, you can always put
Hmm.
something over there, put something over here, and it will sound spatial. It doesn't mean that you're representing the music and the intention of the music. So, Dolby Atmos, again, can be an amazing experience. For me, I work in movies as well. So I've done
Oh, yeah.
with John Cale from Velvet Underground. I've done
Yeah.
I've done 3 albums and 2 movies. Um, and the last movie I did with him a little while ago, I mixed it in surround sound, not Dolby Atmos, but I mixed it in
Yeah.
surround, just me and the director. um, mi- mixing the thing. I've got surround sound systems at home, just normal 5.1.
Yeah.
I don't I don't have Dolby Atmos in my ceiling. I haven't got four holes in my ceiling for the speakers. Um, I think Dolby Atmos is great. I don't know how the end user gets it. You know,
Yeah.
when it's folded down to binaural, it's interesting, but it's very phasey.
Hmm.
You lose a lot of the fidelity of the sound of the instruments. So I think Dolby Atmos is great in most cases, but unless you have the most expensive BMW or
Yeah.
something, you're probably not going to get to experience it.
Yeah.
Um,
That's true. That's true.
yeah, so I think it's great. I think a lot of it is driven by the major labels. Excuse me.
Hmm. Don't worry. Don't worry. It's okay.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is driven by the major labels. It used to be every 10 years they would re release their catalog with a new digitally remastered version of the famous album. Now they
Hmm.
get to re release their catalog in Dolby Atmos.
I'll be
And
honest.
I don't mean to discredit the people that do Dolby Atmos because they're the best engineers in the world, you know, who are doing it. Um, I just don't quite know how it gets to the end user, you know. Um,
Yeah.
but but maybe that leads to the next thing we don't yet know yet what the next thing is, you know.
Yeah. Maybe in
And
a
it
few years, I guess,
yeah,
or months.
but it's fantastic, and I'm just glad that people are looking at new ways and better ways to deliver the beauty of sound, because that gets lost when people are listening on laptop speakers.
Yeah.
You know, it crushes my soul a little bit because
Yeah.
knowing the work that people put into their music, if they have big budget or they have no budget, everyone cares about the music they're making, and every bedroom producer and artist puts so much work into trying to represent their feelings, and trying to get the sounds and the musical parts, and maybe get some dimension and depth in their mix and placement. And when it's only being judged off laptop speakers, it's pretty horrific. So I always tell
Or
my
in your phone,
students,
I guess.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely right. I mean, I check my mixes on my phone,
Hmm.
because that's how people in in the old days, mixing consoles used to have a little metal speaker in the console, a mono
Hmm.
speaker, which was like mono radio. So you'd spend 3, 6, 9 months on an album, spend a ridiculous, insane amount of money on it, have beautiful 24 track Studer or 48 track or 72 track. And at the end of it, going through a beautiful console, and at the end of it, people are going to hear it in the morning, in the bathroom when they're listening on their phone, or back in the day, it would have been on a transistor radio in mono, and that's where people are going to hear music. So you have to make sure that your beautiful music that you're creating also translates to um, the less quality, you know, listening devices. You've got to check with that. And I'll listen on my phone, and if if my mix still sounds great on the phone, I'm really excited. You know, it's fantastic.
Yeah, Adam, and it's amazing all the things that you're talking to us. And Sig told me that we have a question for you from the
Hmm.
viewers. Tell me, Sig.
We do have a question. We have a question from Andrea Navarrete. How does your experience with bands like The Cure and Roxette influence your approach to teaching?
Two really good questions, or one question with two good examples. Um,
Yeah.
with the Cure, with the Cure, um, I did the single It's called Close to Me. The the
Wow.
the band. Thank you.
Oh, my friend, amazing.
Um, my my
I
my
clapped a
friend.
little as well.
I did.
Amazing.
Um,
Wow.
I could hear you clapping. Um, so my friend Dave Allen produced all the Cure stuff, and he asked me if I would work with him. We were working on other projects, and he said, "I'm doing the next single. I really need some kind of like special kind of engineering done," and asked if I would do it. And I had one day off between different albums, and I was exhausted, and I was really tired, and I thought I really need to sleep before I start the next record. But it's The Cure, so that's kind of cool, and it will look good on my discography, and I like the band, so sure, I'll do it. The band arrived 8 hours late to the studio. Um, Back then, they weren't completely sober, so that was a factor. In the process of waiting, I said to Dave Allen, "Do you really need me here?" And he said, "Yeah, I said, "Well, what is it that you need?" And he said, "The video of for the song, we already know what the video is. It's going to be in a wardrobe, and the wardrobe goes over a cliff, and all the band are inside the wardrobe, and water's coming in, and they've got their feet in each other's faces, and it's really claustrophobic. And I need this to sound claustrophobic. I need to have that kind of feeling." So I thought, okay, um, what will I do about that? So I had to visualize the end result. This was a major step in my process of visualizing the song, either if there's a video or visualizing the image and thinking, how do I direct the music? In this instance, there was a very clear concept for the video. So what I did, I got 4 big gobo screens, the really big screens you get in studios. I chose the ones that don't have the window in them, so they were just solid, about 6 foot tall, probably higher. I got 4 of them, and I built a box the size of a wardrobe. And I put the microphone in the box, and I put a lid on top of the screens, and I put Robert Smith inside the box. One so that the vocal would sound tight space. I might have used a Neumann U67, I can't remember, to get that very warm, close sound. And so, but not only did Robert Smith feel claustrophobic, but he sounded claustrophobic. Um, and the fact of putting him in the box, I think, added to his performance of feeling that claustrophobic. So he kind of sang with that intention. So that was a major part for me. There's a lot more story about the making of that, but there's so many little details about that. All I can say is 2 days later, after we recorded that song, I bumped into Robert Smith, and I said, "Oh, hey man, I got to say, what you did the other day was just amazing." Then he looked at me and he said, "What song was it?" He didn't remember recording that song. He was so drunk, he didn't remember. And I'm not suggesting for a minute that that is the way to make a great song. Normally, 100%, it's not the way to make a good song. I think with him, it just shows how great he is. That he was still so on it. So, working on that song, um, when we'd finished it, I thought that was really cool. That's really a great pop song. And then I thought it's going to be a huge hit.
Hmm.
And then I thought, but it's the most pop song the Cure have done. The other songs, like before that, In Between Days was the single before, and Love Cats was kind of a little bit S&M
Yeah,
and a little bit, funny
yeah,
and a
yeah.
bit quick. With this song, I thought this is the most pop song they've ever done. The fans are going to hate it, everyone's going to hate it. The fan, I thought the band will break up because everyone hates the song because it's so pop. The band will break up, and all their fans are going to think, what happened? What went wrong with the Cure? Who killed the Cure? And they'll look at the record, and for the first time, they'll see a different name, which was my name,
Yeah.
and they'll think, him, he did it, he killed them. Now he must die. And seriously, in my mind, I thought, that's it. My career is over. Possibly my life will be over. Everyone's going to hate
Wow.
this. Of course they didn't. Of course it was a huge hit. People
Yeah.
still love the song today, 40 years later almost. People still love the song. So my fears were a little bit exaggerated. But working with the Cure really showed me the importance to myself of visualizing the end result and then thinking, how do I get the sound to be right for the end result? With Roxette, it was the reverse. I've forgotten who asked the question, but what a great question and two fantastic examples that you chose. Because
Here is
Roxette
the
was
question in the screen.
Andrea. Yeah, thank you, Andrea. With Roxette, it was the exact opposite. I received the demos for the band, and Roxette basically was two different artists, both signed to EMI Sweden, who were put together to do a Christmas single, which was very successful. It must have been love, and then EMI Sweden said, "This really worked. You two should do an album." Um, from living in Sweden, I spoke Swedish. I
Yeah.
loved Marie. I loved Marie Fredrikson's voice on the demos. I asked for her solo albums. I got her solo albums in Swedish, which were very Joni Mitchell singer-songwriter, beautiful songs, really deep lyrics, and loved her voice. Per Gessler was in a more of a glam rock kind of band, and I listened to his stuff as well and thought, this is great, this is really poppy, this is really cool. But we have a record and we have his songs and her songs. So who is Roxette? Because they didn't really exist yet. And I was being asked to come in and finish the production on the record and produce a few songs, but I didn't have a clear vision of who they were, apart from his songs and her songs. And I thought, how do we pull that to combine and make, what is Roxette? So when I went to Sweden to start pre-production, we were meant to start working on the songs. And we sat at EMI Sweden, myself and Per and Marie and the head of the label, and they said, so what are you thinking for the songs? And I said, at the moment, I don't know how to think because we need to pull them together, the influences and the two sides. And I said, okay, just imagine we've made the record. The record's done. It's a success. You're in New York to promote. You arrive at the Mayflower Hotel on the Upper West Side, which back then was the good music hotel that people would go to. That was the one that you would survive. If you went to the Chelsea Hotel, you might not survive, but if you went to the Mayflower, you would. I said, you arrive at the Mayflower, you're in your room, you put on the TV, MTV is on, your video comes on. Describe your video. And we spent 4 hours talking about what they would wear, what the relationship was between the two of them. And I thought, you know what? No one should ever know what your relationship is. No one should ever know if you're a couple, if you're together, if you're not together, if you're brother and sister. There should almost always be this push me, pull you kind of thing between the two of you. There should be a tension, but it should never be clear. And there should also be a unity. And that became very much, especially in the first single, The Look, um, that really became the video. And there's things in the video that we described and came up with. And then we had a vision of how do we pull the two sides of Roxette together, create the clear vision. Now we know what that entity is. Now we can make the choices musically to go towards it. So it was a similar method, but from two different sides. From the Cure, the video existed. Now let's make the music. With Roxette, let's imagine the video. And when we've done that, now we can pull together the whole image, the clothes, the body action, the movement between the two of them. So again, producing music, to me, is total concept. And the most successful artists, you look at, you hear the music, and you see them, and it's just like boom, it's all one. It all goes together. And I think that's very much a part of the success. Whether we're talking about Elvis or the Beatles or Chuck Berry or Motown, the music worked with the visual. Or Foo Fighters or
Yeah.
Jack White, you know,
Hmm.
whoever it is, the big artists understand Prince. The big artists understand the importance of connecting their artist persona with their music, and it just sounds, of course, it makes sense. I look at Lenny Kravitz, I listen to what he's doing, of course, it makes sense. I get it. Taylor Swift, Ariana
Yeah.
Grande, whoever it is, you look at it, you hear it, boom, you get it all. And so, in my process, the visual has become a very big part of it.
Yeah, yeah, and I want to thank you for working in that song. It's a great song, close to me. Thank you.
Mm.
It's amazing being here with you, talking about that. Wow, my friend,
It,
thank you.
it's bizarre because it was nearly 40 years ago. Who would imagine we would
Yeah,
be talking about that today? You know,
yeah,
um, when
it's
you make a
amazing,
piece,
beautiful song.
and it's something I learned is like when you make a piece of music. Obviously, the Cure were known. I felt that was going to be successful. I've worked on so many records. I was 100% sure they would be a hit, and they weren't. Other songs I worked on, I didn't expect to be a hit, and they were. You never know. You never know for sure. You never know 100%. Even with a big
Mhm.
artist, you could be you with a huge successful artist. You could be the person that made the record that was the failure. You never know. You know. Um, all you can do is be absolutely in tune with who they are, what they want to achieve, the purpose of the song. And I really believe that when you make music with full honesty and full awareness, that's when it
Mhm.
has a chance. That's when you have a chance that people will listen to it and go, I feel they wrote that song for me, you know,
Yeah.
or I'm feeling what they were feeling, you know. Um, and that only comes when you really connect with the artist. If I'm offered projects and I don't connect with the artist and I don't connect with the music, it's better that I don't do the project because I'm not going to have the emotional response to
Mhm.
come up with the ideas. So that's something I've really learned is important. You have to have that connection. You know.
Amazing, amazing,
Connection is very
and
important.
that so when we consume music we have this when we consume any type of art we've got this instinct called the comfort zone, no? So the brain is used to listen to things that probably if the brain knows the sound before or it's familiar, like for example liminal art, there's super success of liminal art and liminal music right now on the 2024. When you actually recognize that type of familiarity in the sound, your brain decides that it likes the song much faster. What do you think about this comfort zone in relationship with the success of a hit? And do you think it's actually predictable?
That's really interesting. I think one of my many theories, because I didn't have musical training, self-taught. Um, from my experience, from the minute I was born, I was hearing music. I was absorbing sounds, combinations of sound, whether it was like Benny Goodman or big band jazz or bebop or Crosby, Stills and Nash or Hendrix or Led Zeppelin. A song that a lot of people maybe are a bit tired of. I'm not. Stairway to Heaven. I know a lot of people think it's corny, but there's a bass synth in that John Paul Jones plays on the "Ooh Make Me Wonder" on that section, and it's the simplest of bass parts. It's the most beautiful of melodies, and even as a kid, as a young teenager, when I heard that, the sound of that bass synth and the little melody it plays, I found it emotionally overwhelming. I would almost want to cry every time I heard it, and which was embarrassing because Stairway to Heaven is still being played all the time. But I think I think what happens is that we absorb sounds and we absorb combinations of sounds. We may not be aware that that's what we're doing, but we'll hear, a guitar sound from an early Beatles, a George Harrison, you know, solo guitar sound from an early Beatles song. Then we might hear a Hendrix sound, or we might hear, you know, Queen of the Stone Age, incredible guitar sound. Um, and it makes us feel a certain way. We love the sound, we absorb it, but then we might be working on a different record, a different style, and the the guitarist wants to, do a solo, and you start shaping the sound for that solo to make it feel a certain way, the sound of it. And I've done that in cases where I didn't realize I was being influenced by either the sound of a guitar that I grew up with 50 years earlier or from 3 years earlier on a tune that I heard, and there was a certain sound. So I think, I don't know if I'm completely answering your question, but I think that we absorb sounds all the time. They go into our internal emotional library of how we respond to sounds. And then suddenly we're making a bit of music. We can't decide why, but we start, you know, fixing a sound to sound a certain way for a bass line or a bass part without realizing, oh, I'm trying to copy a sound I heard 50 years ago or 5 years ago. But that's our emotional response. Especially for me, it's my emotional response of how I come up with sounds is based on how they make me feel. So I'm not quite sure if I'm getting your question there. I've probably gone off topic a little bit.
Yeah, you actually have. You actually have. And it's amazing because basically what I understand from what you're saying is that the emotional response to a piece of music, it's actually, well, really subjective, but it's actually targeted as well. So this
Mm.
actually gives the idea. For example, I like listening to rock and new metal music. So probably if I put my favorite band to someone that likes afro or likes other type of genre of music styles, they're not gonna find it comfortable probably, and they're gonna
Yeah,
decide they don't like it. So that's what I get from the response. Thank you.
yeah, and they won't get the same emotional response, and maybe because in a lot of heavier rock, there's a lot of hard mid-range frequencies. You know,
Hmm. Yeah.
heavy metal in the 80s and 90s was all about 3K. You know,
Yeah.
because they're the you know, and the the kick drums on Metallica, which is like they
Yeah. Yeah.
weren't like a subby, boomy, round, fat bass drum. Everything was aggressive frequencies, those mid range and the harsh high mids, and that they're very adrenaline frequencies, but they can also be anxiety frequencies. So a lot of people may go, I can't listen to this. I can't listen to this music. You know, um,
Mhm.
the first time I heard the Killers, Mr. Brightside, um, I nearly crashed my car. It came on the radio, and it got me so tense. It got me so anxious. The panic,
Mhm.
and it was the same with Muse. Time is running out. The sound of the voice, the compression on the voice, the fact that every breath in Muse Time Is Running Out is like his last gasp for air, which it should be because the song is called Time Is Running Out. So
Yeah.
it should be about panic. Mr. Brightside is about panic, and those records induce panic. Um, and at first, I couldn't listen to them, and definitely it wasn't safe to me. It wasn't safe for me to be on the road behind the wheel in a car if those came on the radio because I would get so anxious. And it wasn't just by the song; it was by the sound of the song. Um,
The
so
sound.
we, yeah, and why is reggae so calming and warm and nice? It's because the kick drum is nice and tubby, and the bass is so round and so gentle and so fat and so warm that reggae makes us feel in that relaxed, apart from the rhythm and the beat and the message and all of it, the sound makes us feel a certain way. It's the opposite of how Muse Time Is Running Out or Metallica is going to make you feel. So we respond emotionally and physically to the sound of songs and the sound of instruments. And that comes from educating our instinct when we're early and we hear a rock tune that has a lot of harsh high mid range and it's exciting and it gets us up. So now we know if we're making music and we want to get that kind of energy in a song, it's not that we look up a book for a song that has
Hmm.
guitars that make me feel anxious. It's something we've absorbed. And now we know, oh, yeah, we may not even make direct
Hmm.
relationship to the song. We've just absorbed that harsh high mid frequencies on an electric guitar with a bit of distortion or overdrive are going to be adrenaline kind of sounds, you know. So it's just something that we absorb and we have a go to without tracking back 50 years of music history to find out why. It's just something that we feel, you know. Um, and I find it fascinating that from the minute we're born, we're absorbing different music, different references, different sounds of the same instrument, and they may all make us feel a different way. And then as a music maker later, when you come up with an idea for a song, you don't know why you came up with it. You don't know why the bass should be this way or that way, or the guitars should sound a certain way. But it's probably something that we heard in the past that has influenced us, or someone else's record that we heard, and we loved the sound because it made us feel a certain way and we absorb those things and then they come out in our own individual style, which is
The
for
sound
me
is
just
very important. Uh,
yeah.
it's all about the
and
sound.
and for me I just find that part of it just fascinating of how you capture the sound of emotion, which is what I try and teach with my students.
Wow, thank you. That's true. Reggae, metal, all the musical genres sound different
Mm,
and can make us feel different.
mm,
Amazing. And talking about sound, I see behind you that you have a
yeah,
beautiful equipment. Uh, Tell
yeah.
us more about it.
um, I'm running Pro Tools. um, I've been involved with Barefoot Sound for quite some time now. The best speakers ever, absolutely phenomenal. I've got the MM45s. I think they are absolutely perfect. My room, I like tight mixing rooms. I like a smaller room. I don't like a big room where a lot of air moves around. Um, Again, as you can see in these pictures, I've got curtains all around. I've got windows all the way around the room, which is beautiful. I've got UV vinyl on the windows to stop heat damage coming in, to stop the room getting too hot. It's also reflective, so in the daytime, I can have all my curtains open and no one can see in because it's light reflective. So it's great. At the back of the house, unfortunately, through those windows, we were able to see the Palisades fires and the Hollywood fires. But
Mm.
That's the writing room at the back, which is next to the piano room, with French doors that open. So the doors are open, or you can close them and separate. In my gear behind me, I've got a nice little outboard rack. Um, I've got some Neve mic pre's, a vintage 1073 style mic pre, some APIs in there, some of the original uh, blue Focusrites, the ISAs, which I absolutely love. LA2A by Warm Audio up there. I've worked with Plugin Alliance for maybe 10 years. Um, I I use a lot of their plugins just because I feel that they are among the most organic and the most real plugins. Incredibly musical, beautifully musical. I've got all of their, I've got their mega bundle, but all of the channels that they do, the console strips, console channel strips that they do, they're all so true. I've worked on 80 series Neves. I've worked on 88 series Neves, old Tridents, various SSL models, various SSL models, and I can craft a mix in Pro Tools and think, if it's a session I was given that I didn't record, I can think, oh man, I wish I'd recorded these drums um, on a Neve, on an 80 series Neve. That would have been amazing. I can put 80 series Neve plugins on all the drum tracks. And now I have that character. Maybe on all the guitars and the synths, I think, oh, recording these on SSL would be amazing. The next section of the mix can be SSL channel on those. And then if I've got orchestral strings, I can go, oh man, or woman. Um, Neve 88R would have been beautiful for this. I can then put Neve 88R plugin on the channels, and I can click the random button and change the slight variation of that plugin on each channel. Or I can start a mix and think, if I was choosing a studio to mix this, I would do it on a SSL 4000E. I can, on the first insert, I can hold Option, open the first insert on the first channel, select that SSL 4000E plugin, and it will go boom, 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 all the way through my mix, every channel. So now my mix is going to sound like an SSL console. Then I can hit the random button, and it's going to give me 72 variations of the same plugin, all slightly different, just like an analog console. Um, so it's phenomenal. I love it. You couldn't create a console that was part vintage Neve 80 series, then SSL 4000E, then Neve 88R. It, it could be done, of course, but it would be phenomenally expensive and big. I can do that in the box. I've had the experience of knowing what each one of those does to the sound and how the difference in the sound makes me feel. So from the real experience, I can craft how I use the plugin. Um, for effects, you can't beat Sound Toys. Absolutely phenomenal. The best set of effect plugins ever. And what else is in my cupboard here? I'm using an Avid artist mix
Artist
uh,
mix, yeah.
8-channel mixer here, which is perfect. You know, 8 fingers. I got 2 thumbs. Back in the Trident days on a Rush, we'd be using all 10, but I'm okay just using 8 fingers. I can play my mixes. I've got 8 faders. If I want to jump to the next 8 tracks, you know, press a button, it jumps to the next state. I can perform and play my mixes like I learned back in the day. So I can use the latest technology to bring in all the heart and artistry of how I learnt and how to perform a song in the mix, and I can do it here in the box in my little studio. And then I've got a collection of different mics, Neumanns and various other things.
We use here the artist mix, this, right?
Yes, absolutely
That's
love it.
amazing.
Yep,
Yeah,
love.
Amazing.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
And if you want more, you can join them together. You know,
Yeah.
but and then you can
I have
use your
to
feet.
hear you. Yeah.
Great. So you can have your hands and your feet on the mix, which is great.
Hey, I see that you have, well, you have worked a lot in the with artists and in important studios. And
Mm.
can you tell me how do you translate your wisdom and experience as an educator? Because I know that you teach too, right?
Yeah. Um, Oh, I got a shout out to Olo headphones as well. Olo Audio. I've been involved with this company for 5 years. Absolutely love these headphones. Um, how do I translate what I know? So I teach very practically. I don't teach audio theory because most of it I don't understand myself. Um, Everything the way I learned was you move the microphones, you choose the different microphones until you get the sound that feels right. There's You can learn certain theory from a book, but like with everything, you can read how to cook, you can read the recipes in a cookbook, but until you actually start putting the ingredients together, you're not going to know in theory how to make a great dish. It's the same with making music. So with my students, um, I do a lot of recording with them. Often in the class, I do two different classes at UCLA. The first one is an overview of what is music production, what is involved from pre-production to working on song structure to tempo to working on the key to trying different ideas to get the song in shape to experiment with it. I found that the clearer plan I have for a song, if I'm really clear on where I want to go with the song, that actually allows me to experiment because I've got my safety net. I've got my plan of where I'm going. So that allows me to go off and try and experiment with an idea which is unexpected. And maybe it will be a great surprise and it's going to be a good idea. Or maybe I'll realize, no, that's too far out of what I'm trying to do here. And it only confirms that I'm on the right path. So with the students, um, maybe frustratingly for them, I'll often show them one example of how things are done, and then I'll show them an exactly opposite example of how things are done. And I'll explain, and it's everything in between, as well as these two extremes of how to record a drum kit, with 16 microphones or three microphones, or one. Um, but everything that I teach them is like listening to the instrument, whether it's a violin or an acoustic guitar or a grand piano or a drum kit. I'll have them walk in and move around and listen to the tone of each element and then think, and then have them realize and show them by choosing a certain microphone, putting it in a certain position or moving it, I get a different version of the sound of that instrument. And not only do I get a different version of the sound, but I actually get a different emotional connect by the sound being different. So rather than teach them this is how you do things, because you can't. There is
Mhm.
no one way to do anything. You know, I will show them good examples of possible ways to do things, but the most thing is to teach them to experiment because I can put 16 microphones and beautiful Neumanns and everything I
Yeah.
want. I can put that on a drum kit, but someone at home with an SM57, you know, if they've got a drummer comes and plays in their bedroom or their lounge, you know, then they may not have 16 Neumanns and
Mhm. Yeah, of
Sennheisers.
course.
So, how with one mic do you try and capture a decent sound? Um, and sometimes the one mic may be better. When I'm showing them how to record acoustic guitar, generally in my process, I record everything flat. Everything
Uh-huh.
is about mic placement. I'll may use a little bit of compression, but not too much, just a little hint, just a bit of shaping and control. But I don't like to EQ when I'm recording. I prefer to change the mic or change the position of the
Oh,
mic.
okay.
Yeah, and get the best natural sound. So I'll with an acoustic guitar, you've got with any instrument, you have basically three tonal areas. You have the low warmth, you have the mids, and you have the highs, just like an old hi-fi or on your car sound system. You have bass, treble, and mid, plus or minus. It's the same basics that hasn't changed, you know, in terms of what EQ, what equalization is. So I'll put a thin mic, like a pencil mic, a Sherps or something, over the neck. And people often say, oh, the 12th fret, the 13th fret. It depends on the guitar. It depends if it's steel strings. Is the artist using their thumb or a heavy pick? Have they got heavy gauge or light gauge? Are the strings new or are they
Yeah.
old? What position are they playing on the guitar? All of those factors come in. So you can't go, oh, I read in a book that you're meant to put the mic over the 12th fret. It's going to change. So I'll have a mic over the neck, a thin mic. I'll have a beautiful full Neumann or ribbon mic over the sound hole, and I'll have a mic on the body of the guitar. And they're going to give me highs, mids, and lows. And then I'm going to blend the sound that I want between the three tone controls, just like you'd have on a stereo system. But then when I've got the three beautiful, expensive mics up, I also put an SM57 in and say, if this is the only mic you have, then how can we get it to sound like the beautiful three mics? And if you get your ear into the guitar and you listen and you identify where the sound is happening, you can move that microphone to capture the version of the sound. An SM57 is very bright, it boosts the mids, it doesn't get much warmth. So, as it's a very bright sounding, slightly harsh mic, you don't want to put it in the most harsh sound of the guitar, which is, basically where the neck is. With your ear, find where the warmest part of the sound is and put your harsh sounding mic towards the warmest part of the sound. Now you're going to make an SM57 sound really good. So I try and teach really kind of like practical application. I don't teach theory. Um, it's more about use your ears and how does it feel, you know, and using different variations. That's very much my approach. And it's nearly always done in the context of building a song. You know, we'll look at drums, we'll record drums, but we'll put a drum pattern down. And then I'll probably edit up the drums for a song structure. The next week we'll look at piano and we'll experiment recording piano with cardioid mics, with Neumanns, with ribbon mics, with some room mics further away, get the different feeling of the different sounds. But while we're doing it, we'll put a chord sequence down on top of the drums. The next week we'll look at recording bass and maybe acoustic guitar. And while we do that in the context of adding parts to the song that we're building. So that the students get a real practical sense of putting a song together and also crafting the sound and also understanding, some audio theory and audio lessons, but mainly they're learning mic technique and the difference between microphones and how different mics sound different and capture different elements of sound that make you feel a certain different way.
Well,
So
Adam,
it's
I think that I would like to be your student because I learned a lot with all the things that you said.
come, come to LA.
Yeah,
You
I
are
will
coming
come
to
the
LA.
next week.
Yeah,
Next
yeah,
week.
yeah,
Hey,
yeah.
Adam. Well, talking about education, there's going to be a great event in March, and Sik is going to talk us about that event in Mexico.
Excellent. In Mexico City.
Yeah, so it's the Pan American Audio Educators Conference that's taking place from March the 29th to the 31st at Mexico City at the World Trade Center. It's going to be run currently with Soundcheck Expo. So if you want to go to both events, you can actually go to both events. You can meet a lot of educators, developers, thought leaders. This is the schedule of the event. You just have to arrive to Benito Juarez Airport. A huge shout out to the sponsors as well of this huge event. We're going to talk about a lot of different topics. There are going to be workshops talking about artificial intelligence, production, and the idea is that the educators actually share their experiences and their methods. So you might not want to miss Pan American Audio Educators.
It's going to be great event.
I see so many of my friends in the pictures there. I'm hoping I
Yeah,
can get them. I'm not sure if time is going to let me, but I'm definitely going to try and get there.
well,
Um,
you should go because you have a lot of knowledge for all the people.
yeah, no, I'll definitely try.
Now my dog is barking.
I heard it's great.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was gonna turn around because I heard it in my headphones and I thought one of my dogs had come. Uh, you're talking about.
Oh, my friend, thank you for this time with us.
Oh,
It
it's been a
was
pleasure.
amazing. It was amazing. I can't believe uh, that I'm speaking with the person who works in close to me and other songs. Yeah, thank you, thank
Oh,
you
Amazing.
for all.
Thank you.
no,
And
it's a pleasure to chat with you guys. I've spent time in Mexico City before, so if I can get to the Pan American Conference, I definitely will love it there. And I've spent wonderful time um, in Chile and Argentina, and absolutely loved it working with Lucy Bell, a few albums. So any excuse to get back is good for me. And it's thank you for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to chat with you guys.
It's been amazing,
thank you.
and it's been a huge honor to have you here. Also, thank you a lot to all the people that are watching this episode right now. Remember that this episode is going to be found on all streaming platforms as well as a podcast. We're gonna edit a little bit the episode and you will be able to find it. It's really simple. You just get into the platform on which you listen to podcasts and you search for Produciendo con Julio Monroy, and you will be able to find this episode and all the past episodes as well. On the other hand, we are actually now opening our new Discord server, and if you want to join, you're all welcome to join. We're going to be talking about audio, we're going to be talking about mixing, immersive audio. You can actually send us your projects as well. If whatever you want to share, it's really simple. A QR code is going to appear on the screen, and you will be able to join using that QR code. So that's it. Commercial break.
Thank you, Sick. Thank you, Sick, and thank you, Adam, for everything. Well, we have run out of time, but I promise you that we was going to be 1 hour. But
It's
wow,
okay.
man,
Well, well,
thank you
well,
for all.
well, once I start, it's hard to stop me.
No, it was amazing, and I hope to see you next week at the NAM show.
Absolutely. Yeah, we will. We'll hang out.
Yeah,
Looking forward to
looking
it.
forward. Thank you,
Can't
my
wait.
friend. Thank you for all the people who watch the stream
Yeah, thank you for everyone looking. If anyone is at NAM, I'm doing a panel on uh, Thursday at noon next week.
Thursday.
You'll find my socials and it's on there.
I'll be there. I'll be there.
And looking forward
Yeah,
to it.
There are the
so it's fun.
socials. There are the socials down there.
Yeah, good.
Perfect. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, everyone. Sick. Well, it was amazing, and well, see you in the next few weeks. Thank you for watching us. Bye bye.
Thanks for inviting.